I want to tell you, not as the spokesperson of the President of the Senate, but as a former member of the House of Representatives and the spokesperson. So I am well versed in the procedures and the process of budget. First, what is budget? This is simply an estimate of government, estimate of income and expenditure. And when it is an estimate, it has to go through a whole lot of processes and procedures. By the combined effect of Section 80, 88, and 4.1, the legislature has the legislative powers. The legislative powers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is resting on a Senate and a House of Representatives. Budget, when passed, becomes an appropriation act. So it is a product of the legislature.
Okay.
So when you are talking about padding, the first question to ask is, if the legislature has powers over appropriation, the power to add and the power to subtract, can the addition or the subtraction be construed to be padding? No. Because they have the power to, the executive will bring in, after going through all the processes from the MDS, they will bring it to the legislature. The appropriation and the finance committees of the House, after the two houses, after working through it, they come together for harmonization of the estimates brought by the executive. After the harmonization, they go into a joint session presided over by the President of the Senate, who is the chairman of the National Assembly, and the Speaker. So when it goes through all of that, it goes to the executive, it goes to the President for assent. In this case, the President, like in the, when the Presidency issued a press release, he said the National Assembly added 1.2. That addition is exercising that addition by the power that the Constitution vested on it. So that cannot be said to be padding. That's one. Then number two is that all the items in the budget, apart from the 1.2, originate from the executive, the MDS. They all brought it, the issue of buying motorcycle, the issue of buying a car, the issue of doing this, doing that. In fact, including even those things, even in the constituencies of the respective senators and the House members. They all originate from ministries and department agencies of government. So the additional of 1.2 is that after the engagement in the budget session, they found out that there are development gaps. There are things the executive may not have taken care of. For example, the community where I come from, I'm from Eket in Akpabio State. And in Eket, we are in the riverine areas, coastal areas. And if you want to trigger maybe a commodity, a proposal for a commodity board and all of that, you are now have to take care of the fishermen and women within that axis. So most of these, you will see they can provide in the budget the issue of tractors to empower the farmers. The man in Bayelsa and the man in Akpabio doesn't need tractors. He needs fishing implements. So the legislature, from the engagement, and remember this will represent the people, will now said, no, you have to also look at ecological agriculture, where you have to look at somebody from Gombe. You know, you want to empower him, you give him something, a farming implement relating to beans. If you want to go to Kano, in that axis, you give a farming implement relating to, groundnuts, to have, if you want to bring back groundnut pyramid. And if you want to do the same thing in Bayelsa, so ecological agriculture. So it is from that intervention that they said, no, add this to this, add this to this, add this to this, that addition. So the word padding is like the common legislative parlance of saying banana peel. If you follow the trend, I was a spokesperson of the House of Representatives in the 6th Assembly. When Speaker Patricia Ete was a speaker, we were all witnesses to the fact that they brought up this type of issue. They said padding of budget, introduction of this and all of that. And the woman was removed. After the removal of that woman, have you heard again issue of padding? There have been none. The woman was removed. The thing never existed. And most of the players in today's padding, the current stars of today's padding in the Senate, were active players too, that time in the House of Reps. Go to history. Ask anybody. So there are two seasons for these things in the National Assembly. When once the committee is formed, during the formation of committees, the outcome of that formation will bring about people becoming agitative, going to the public domain, going to media houses to go and talk about all sorts of things, you know. But the Senate president escaped that because he was able to come out and throw it back to the members, regardless of political parties.
Now you are speaking for the Senate president, right?
No. I'm talking,
you are still speaking in your personal capacity.
Yes, I'm still talking in my personal capacity, but I'm citing that as an instance, how he escaped that banana peel. You know, they became peaceful, and some people even came out to say, you remember when Senator Abo came out to say that the anger is because of not giving everybody the proper positions in the formation of the committees. You know, that one has gone past. Okay. Now, this budget, the same people are coming. Now, they are talking about the Senate president. Remember this budget, before it was passed, it was through a joint session. There are two presiding officers in the Senate and two presiding officers in the House of Reps. The Senate president and the deputy Senate president. In the House of Reps, the speaker and the deputy speaker. Are you now saying that it's only the Senate president, Senator Godswill Akpabio, who has a constituency? If he's not the only person having a constituency, we need to also know what is there in the budget for the constituency of the deputy speaker, the speaker, and the deputy Senate president. So when everybody is talking about Godswill Akpabio, it sounds like a chorus of vendetta. And who are these choristers?
Okay, so let me come in here because, you know, I remember definitely in the 6th Assembly when you said, when people talk about budget padding, you know, it seems as if they're referring to fashion design, you know, tailor making, because that's where the word padding is very conversant with. And, you know, you also talked about the fact that there's usually what you call the pre-budget meeting, you know, and oversight, you know, functions. But coming into this conversation, we're looking at the two dimensions. I mean, we saw what Serap did this morning, asking that, you know, Senator Ningi should take, the ICPC should wade into the matter, EFCC should wade into the matter in these allegations or so alert. But going forward, we've also seen some senators come out to say, well, you only get what you lobby for. Someone like Senator Ned Nwoko, who said he was given 1 billion naira for constituency projects. Alindume came out to say he had 200 million naira. So the numbers differ. In terms of the word, I know you have justified and clarified the word padding. What about the word in sessions? Does that even exist in the budget?
Well, one thing you need to also understand, I quite agree that this discussion is for the purposes of public enlightenment. Otherwise, there is no issue there. First and foremost, EFCC and ICPC, they have nothing doing with the budget. Now, what happens is this. I want to take the Senate president, Senator Godswill Akpabio, for example. He has 4 federal constituencies. Oboro Kara, Ikotokbene, Ikono, Ini. He has Abak, Itemekbo. He has Ukanafun, Orogonam. He has 4 federal constituencies, meaning that he has 4 members of the House of Reps in his senatorial district, plus him. Then the man in Bayelsa, for example, I'm just using that example too, who has maybe 2 local government constituting a senatorial district, has 2 members of the House of Representatives and a senator. In some cases, 1 House of Rep member. So when you look at the budget, the issue of representation at the Senate is equality of state, 3 per state, whether small state or big state. But the issue of representation in the House of Reps is population driven. For example, the total number from Kano and Lagos is going to be numbers of House of Reps members in Kano and Lagos, for example. It's going to be different from the total number of House of Reps members from Bayelsa, still use that as an example. So what I'm trying to let you understand is that the projects, because of the constituencies, if every member is entitled to a constituency project or a contribution input into the budget, you don't expect Ikot-Ogbene Senatorial District, for example, with 4 members, 5 including the senators in the National Assembly, having the same quantum of project like somebody from another senatorial district who possibly has 1 member and 1 senator. It cannot be the same. Because even if you distribute it equally, 4 members would definitely have more than 1 member. So that is on one part. And remember that this budget is an estimate of government brought from the executive. The executive may not be able to put into contemplation the issue of equity in terms of distribution of projects. Where, for example, the issue of oil exploitation and exploration, where I come from, the minister of petroleum oil, for example, may not be able to understand the welter of forces weighing against the social and economic balance in Eket, where I come from. So he may not take into consideration certain details which will help to trigger growth and development. Remember, this budget is all about economic recovery and growth plans. So when it comes to the parliament, because the Eket people have a representative, we don't say, no, Mr. Speaker, no, Mr. Chairman of Appropriation, look at this, look at this, look at this. On the basis of the records of oversight and whatever has happened, this will have to be imputed in. Because it forms part and parcel of the budget. And people talk as if the 28 trillion or 27.5 trillion money that is the money government is going to spend. It's an estimate. In the 8th Assembly, government funded by only 40% of the entire budget. It can be 0%. This is the first budget for the past 20 years. Quote me, I'm not an economist, but have gone through it all. You know, that capital is a driving force.
It's higher than recurrent.
It's higher than recurrent. And what that means is that this government is conscious of infrastructural development to be able to trigger, development prospects of Nigeria. This is the first time. And so I expect people, when people are talking about Akpabio should resign or this EFCC should come in and all of that, I expect people to come up and ask this question. Now, with a budget of 27 trillion, predicated on exchange rate of 800 naira to $1, by the time that budget was done, it was 800 naira to $1. But today, it's 1,600 naira to $1. I expected everybody to come out now to provide alternative and how that budget is going to be funded. That is what I understand to be opposition.
The people are too busy looking for what to eat. There's
yes.
the inflation that is hitting the streets is in such dimensions.
No, what you are going to eat is going to be a product. It's going to be an outcome of the prosperity of the nation. And the prosperity of the nation is right with needle point precision. It's right at the point of our various contributions to develop the economy. I expected opposition political parties to then come in, dollar is now 1,600. This is how to go about it and all of that. They provide alternative opinion that will help to drive. What they are chasing now is a pattern. It's a pattern. After that Patricia Ete's incident, there have been subsequent speakers. There has been Tambua, there have been Dogara, and all of that. Up to Tajuddin here, nobody has raised that thing. I'm introducing you. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with North or South. But
so remember Abdulmumin Jibrin as well.
Yes. So you begin to see that there is a pattern, not religious and not North-South, but particular political mercantilist politicians are always set during a season to wipe up a sentiment, to raise dust, of course, to now continue to use public perception to get what they want. It has nothing to do with religion.
All right. Talking about perception, let me interrupt you here.
Yeah.
You talked about perception. The perception out there is that each time a member of the National Assembly speaks up against something that is seen as not in the interest of the people, whether it is Senator Abdul Ningi, whether it's Senator Shehu Sani or whoever, whether it's even in the House, like you said, Abdulmumin Jibrin, that these people, the chamber will come up against the person and suspend him. I recall that retired DIG, the late retired DIG, Nohu, also got up in the Senate to say that there were members of the National Assembly that he investigated, and they ought not to be in the National Assembly, and he was suspended too. So, what is this penchant for suspending such people rather than actually looking into their claims and taking the right steps to ensure that if there was anything wrong in the processes, they are corrected?
Okay, I can tell you, you see, this perception thing is driven sometimes by the delinquent act of people who ought to know, but they refuse to. I want to give you, like Senator Ningi's example. The House is governed by rules. By Section 60 of the Constitution, it empowers the National Assembly, the two chambers, to make for itself rules and regulations. And that's where the rule book originates. So, let me give you, Ningi is a very experienced and reputable man. I respect him a lot. We were together in the House of Reps.
Yes, I know that.
Yes. So, one could have expected that as experienced and reputable as he is, he stumbled on something he perceived, say, oh, he got a consultant. The consultant did not even finish the work. He went with the Northern Senators Forum members to go and see the Senate President. Senate President, wow, if this is correct, can you go and bring the document? And then let's set up a committee in the House to look at that. That's an action of a man who is diligent, and action of a leader. And
that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. Instead of bringing that report, he said, oh, the report is not yet concluded. It's not complete. So why are you talking about this? The next thing he did was to go to BBC House Service. So even if he had something to say, he would have said it in the floor. It would have come under privilege. That is the parliamentary culture. That is the standard. That is the precedent. It will have come under privilege. Now, he will rise up and table that thing. Others will participate in the discussion. But instead, he took it to House Service. What was his intention? The intention was, of course, gullible and callous. And after doing that, when he came back, another senator came back to rise under the same privilege. That his privilege has been breached. You know? That's lawful. It has nothing to do with Senator Akpabio, the Senate President. And it was debated. He was given opportunity under the principle of law of fair hearing. He was given opportunity to assert that he alleged. And of course, you and I are aware that there were 5 television stations, including yours, who beamed it live. He was unable to. Where are the 2 national budgets that are operating? Where are they? You know? What is this thing you're citing? You are talking about constituency project. And he admitted there that he even had 2 billion from his constituency. So what is the fuse? But meanwhile, he has already soaked the public opinion. He has already soaked the establishment. He has soaked everywhere with the perception that something has gone wrong.
And a level of distrust for the Senate as well. I'm going to come back to you on the procedure for suspension, because we listened to Senator Shehu Sani over the days, and he said perhaps the procedure for the suspension of Ningi was not carried through. He mentioned the fact that the Committee on Ethics and Privileges should have been brought in, to look at some of these accusations. But we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with our conversation.
Every morning is an opportunity to take your hustle to the next level. Every morning is one day closer to your ambition. So, make every morning count. Cup after cup, morning after morning. Start strong, finish strong. Nescafe.
Well, thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining us, we're still looking at the allegation of pardon in the Nigerian Senate. This time, we're trying to get the facts from the myth, and we do have Right Honorable Eseme Ibo, who has been talking to us about this. He is also a former spokesperson of the House of Representatives. So back to you, Right Honorable. I mean, the question I was going to ask, which I'm asking now, what is the procedure for suspension?
Well, there are instances where a matter comes up and is referred to the Committee on Ethics and Privileges. That's so. But in this case, and there are also instances like in this case, where it has to be done through the Committee of the Whole. Committee of the Whole, the Speaker or the President of the Senate will now become the chairman. He will come down from there and come lower. Then everybody will participate in it. And why this was taking place was to elaborately make sure that there is a robust engagement, there is transparency in the process and the procedure, so that he will not be gagged. Because if you go to committee of Ethics and Privileges, the committee members may be just 5 or 10, and the 10 may become biased. So he may be oppressed. They may not want to take him on record on the issues. But in the Committee of the Whole, it was televised live so that everybody anywhere would see the process. And the principle of law is very clear, that fair hearing is one of the strongest pillars in the principle of law. You must hear from the other side. Even a man who kills will be asked, are you guilty or not? He said he's not guilty. Then proceed to enter your defense. So this man was brought before the entire Senate, and that procedure was engaged in consonance with that principle of fair hearing. And you heard, he said it, everybody said those for and against. And to tell you how liberal the man Godswill Akpabio is, how generous he is in act and in heart. When there were proposals for 1 year suspension, 6 months suspension, and 3 months suspension, because he didn't want to follow the tide. He now said those in support of 3 months suspension say aye. There were very few. And he didn't want to proceed into 6 months. So he just hit the gavel for 3 months. If he had proceeded to say those in support of 6 months, you will have heard thunderous, because everybody was very bitter. Everybody was very bitter, including members of the Northern Senators Forum.
Yeah, but we've had a lot of talk from senators, including members of the NSF. Sunday Karimi, I remember, saying that he had no business doing what he did. Abdul Ningi had no business doing what he did, while others were in support. Adora did talk about Senator Ali Ndume and others also speaking about what they got. Now, the perception, I'm going back there, the perception about the National Assembly, especially when it comes to budgetary matters, is one that is worrisome. The former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, I saw a video clip where he spoke and he said that the National Assembly's padding the budget, adding things that the executive didn't put into the budget was criminal. He did say that the National Assembly at that time, at the time he was speaking, is full of corrupt people and he called unarmed robbers. What will the National Assembly be doing to correct this perception?
Yeah, one, I want to start from Obasanjo. Obasanjo is a military man and he has not removed that garment. So democracy to Obasanjo is a very strange thing. Recall, it was the same Obasanjo who made it, when it was the time for the Southeast to produce Senate presidents. Himself and this same set of people made sure that the Southeast produced 5 Senate presidents within 4 years. That's a trend. And he was the person who introduced zonal interventions, this constituency project thing. It was in his time. So what was his intention? So anything which is not done and promoted by him, it is a product of robbery. It's a product of crime. He's the person who introduced. Go and check the records. What was the intention? What was the driving force? And he cannot turn around to say the executive did not. I think during Yaradua, this issue of the powers over appropriation went up to the Supreme Court before it was peacefully settled. Who has powers over appropriation? So when he says that the legislature have been inserting what the executive did not, whatever the executive inserts, as a matter of fact, that is just a proposal. The final say on appropriation is National Assembly, Senate, and House of Reps. When once it passes through, we have the concurrence of those two chambers. That's final.
All right.
And the president can decline assent. It can be taken back there after 30 days. Remember how the NDDC Act. NDDC Act is a product of the parliament. So for somebody to now say that he introduces, the National Assembly, I'm not a senator, but let me tell you one secret you must take home. The 10th Senate, this 10th Senate, is the biggest blessing Providence has intervened. Providence have intervened in the honor of this country. It is the best.
Let me come in here because I heard you mention the courts. So let's look at the role of the judicial interpretation here. We remember when Senator Ndume, went to court when he was suspended, and the court interpreted that you cannot suspend the whole constituency, and he was recalled. What is the difference between that scenario and the suspension of Senator Ningi, who has also gone to court?
Well, when you are talking about suspension is generic, but the particulars of the issues leading to the suspension differs. The particulars differ in various ways. So when you are talking about legal interpretation, there's a particular circumstance. For example, the court will tell you that, Supreme Court will tell you that, look, it is an internal affairs of a political party to determine who is its candidate. It's the same court, in another circumstance, will say that the primaries of a particular election must take place in so-so-so place, in so-so place, that the other person was not validly elected. We have preponderance of such cases. So what the outcome of every case is determined by the particulars of the claim. So we cannot begin now to speculate that Ndume went to court. This was the outcome. So in that case, that application could have come here. If the guy decided to act on his own, and not as a representative of people, and the particulars of his suspension have hinged on the issue of privilege, a breach of privilege. So there are a lot of instances like that. But however, all what I'm trying to tell you is that when it comes to the current Senate, it is the biggest blessing to Nigerians because it's robust. They have very matured and deep-minded people who are members of the current Senate. It is the best we've ever had. But let us not begin to take individual personality to go on the issue of vendetta. It's not. Look at Senator Godswill Akpabio. After 59 years of this country, he went to the International Parliamentary Union and became elected as a member of his executive committee, which of course is a diplomatic laurel, for this country. It's a laureate that this country has benefited from such. And he has shown greatly his ability to go beyond the issue of political activism and now decide to work together with the executive, knowing the intention of the current presidency. Tinubu is the first private person, business-conscious person, somebody coming from the background he comes from, seeking to become the president of Nigeria. So, and he requires some level of legislative collaboration to be able to activate some of those ingenious things that he is initiating. So I am thinking that we should leave perception and now begin to encourage this gentleman to go beyond the ordinary.
All right, I hear you, but then again, congratulations on the men you've mentioned, the president and the Senate president, on the laurels they have achieved. But coming back to the matter, Perceptions, they say, sometimes can become the rule if it is not clarified.
Very well.
And you're talking about a whole constituency. You're talking about people's lives. You're talking about their representation. So let's, for one instance, in this guise, remove the conversation of Ningi and look at the people that he represents, which is where these perceptions are coming from. Perhaps they are naive, maybe ignorant, but then their voices still count. So in the issue of representation, in this conversation of suspension, does it now mean that in the 3 months that these people will not have what is due for them coming to them, that they will not be able to have adequate, feedback and returns from what is supposed to be their lot in that budget?
Okay, the principle of law is very clear that no man is punished with an intention of subjecting him to torture or anything. What the law does when it comes to the enforcement of the law is to serve as deterrence. So when a thing like that is administered on an individual, is intended to serve as deterrent so that others would not tread that path. Otherwise, we are going to have anarchy. And if somebody does that kind of thing he did, and he walks away with it because of that issue of constituency, you are going to introduce institutional anarchy, where anybody can get up that day and say, I saw the Senate president with my wife, or I saw him carrying this and all of that, and knowing too well that there will be no deterrence service, So that is on one part. Then the other thing is that we must be conscious in our electoral process on the issue of leadership recruitment culture. We should be able to interrogate, the process of recruitment of our leaders into various places of authorities and various places of responsibility. What is leadership? Leadership is a responsibility that must be accounted for at all times, and it is not given. It is usually earned. So we will be able to have a society where institutions are driven by rules and regulations. Look at America when Donald Trump, wanted to alter the face of the electoral process in America. It's not the American people, it's the institutions. Institutions stood up and represented the American people. And today we have it better. So I expect our institutions to be strong and not for us to allow people to emerge as strong men. But once we have too many strong men with weak institutions, we can never get it very right.
We already have strong men. But I think it's a good place for us to leave the conversation because there's so much to talk about, but there's very little time within which to do it. So we thank you very much,
thank you very sincerely,
Honorable Yibo, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
The spokesman of the President of the Nigerian Senate, Honorable SMA Yibo, has joined us to talk about